In the UK, Canada and France, people don't need a vaccine passport to attend a place of worship. But as their governments recognise religious practice as essential, our government proposes to permit only the double vaccinated to exercise the freedom to worship. This non-essential view of religion is disproportionately affecting LGAs that have already suffered the harshest lockdown and are among the most religious in the country. As we head towards Freedom Day, should our government recognise religious practice as essential and protect worship as a fundamental human right?
Dave Sharma.
Well, look, absolutely, worship is a fundamental human right.
Only if you're vaccinated, because you won't be able to go to services if you're not.
Well, I think it'll firstly depend on the level of vaccination and the policies that churches or other religious groups impose. But
it's not the churches or religious groups that will be imposing them. It's the state governments who are saying once you reach a certain vaccination threshold in the population, yes, you will be able to go and worship, but you've got to be vaccinated to do that.
Yeah.
So it's not a right.
No, but I'd make this point. This isn't singling out any particular religion or religion at all. This is true for any mass gathering or events. You'll only be able to do certain things under state government policy if you are double vaccinated. So churches and religious groups and places of worship are not being treated any differently from any other large gathering of people here. And we've had this throughout. I mean, we've had, it doesn't matter whether your funeral is Islamic or Jewish or secular, you can only have a certain number of people there. It doesn't matter if your wedding is one faith or another, you can only have a certain number of people there. I don't doubt that it's imposing hardship, but I mean, the question referred to the examples of the UK and Canada. I mean, there's 32,000 new cases a day in the UK with a high level of vaccination. There's 4,500 new cases a day in Canada on average with a high level of vaccination. Is that where would we be comfortable with that level in Australia? I suspect not. And these are the decisions we all have to take collectively as a society. But we've taken the decision, and it has imposed hardship on lots of communities of faith, that this is too dangerous a time to be risking outbreaks and people have to sacrifice that
Linda,
of worship.
would you be comfortable with places of worship turning people away if they're not vaccinated?
It's really interesting we're having this discussion because a minister of a Christian church, I had the same discussion with just yesterday. And I think that's what's really important, Stan, is that we recognise that religious leaders of many faiths have played an amazing role in this pandemic. They've cared for their congregation. The Muslim Association set up the pop-up clinic in Lakemba, which was incredibly successful. So we need to recognise that they have played such an important role, and faith is important to many, many people, and it is a human right. I actually think that vaccine passports are inevitable, and whether we like it or not, the Premier's bring them in by stealth anyhow, by precisely what we're discussing.
So you'd be
now.
comfortable with saying that if you haven't been vaccinated, then you won't be able to go to a place of worship?
I think that we need to have that discussion, Stan. And the questioner said, it should be an essential service. We haven't had that discussion. But it is clear to me that many freedoms that we once understood will change, including going to a restaurant, going to a concert, a whole range of other things.
Going to a restaurant and a concert is different to going to a place of worship where you may be seeking support and solace through what is a very difficult time. John Lee, you've written about this challenge overall to democracy, how we understand it, the rights and liberties that people have within a democracy, and what we have to give up during an emergency. If you look at how the past 18 months, 2 years have played out, how are we faring in Australia?
Well, not as well as I would have hoped, I would have to say. I mean, we are a democracy, and when governments propose to disrupt or suspend the basic rights of its citizens, there is a heavy onus on the government to be transparent about its reasoning, to make sure its policies are accountable and are contestable. But if you look what's happened, and I'm mainly speaking about state governments because they're the ones imposing most of the rules. You know, we hear two lines every day. This is the health advice and this is our modelling.
Yes.
We're never really told the reasoning behind the health advice. We're never really told the assumptions behind the modelling. And certain obligations or certain rules are then imposed onto populations. Now, if you look at the complexity of the problem, democratic governments have to balance different risks, different rights, different interests, and they've got to have a conversation with a broader group of people beyond chief health officers and bureaucrats. That hasn't happened, and I sense it's led to a lot of the anger that's obviously been expressed in this program tonight, but it's also led to poor policy decisions. You know, when was the last time you heard any premier of any state admit they got something wrong, which clearly, occasionally they do, because they're fallible. But there is no real improvement or refinement of policies because there's very few incentives to do so when you don't have the transparency. So for me, that's not how democracy works. That's how authoritarian governments tend to approach problems in a very singular or single-minded manner. I think that, I'm not trying to claim we're authoritarian, but I think there has been a creeping authoritarian approach to managing what is a very difficult problem.